What does it say to you that we are now staring this potential charging decision in this case after the president has changed the prosecutor?
Well, so first of all, it's important to keep in mind that it's really hard to bring and prove a false statements or perjury case. People sometimes sort of say that casually, but you have to prove a couple things. First of all, you have to prove that the statement made, the testimony in this case given to Congress, was false and that it was intentionally false, that the person who made the statements, gave the testimony, lied on purpose. Now, it's real easy to get an indictment. It's not automatic, but all you have to do is go into a grand jury, convince a majority, not unanimous, but a majority of grand jurors that you have probable cause. That's a low standard. That's much different than what you'll need to prove someone's guilt at trial eventually. But the timing here, Casey, as you alluded to, is so important because just days ago, Donald Trump replaced the prosecutor in this office and said specifically in his post, because he wants Jim Comey, among others, to be prosecuted. So that's something that if there's an indictment, I promise you, Jim Comey's legal team will use that to argue that these cases are politically motivated and should be thrown out.
Very interesting. And so to that point, John Miller, you know James Comey. You have worked around with James Comey over the years. What can you tell us about whether he was expecting this and what it may mean for him personally?
Well, I think he was expecting this from the moment that the President of the United States fired the sitting U.S. attorney who had determined there was not enough to go forward and advised the Attorney General to get Comey and to do it quickly, along with a couple of others. So there's, you know, a lot of the times in the backgrounds of these things, there's a hidden agenda behind certain prosecutions, or at least the allegation. In this case, the agenda is not really hidden. The president has been crystal clear. I want to get my enemies. I'm mad at them for a bunch of things, and I want them charged. So that's kind of out there. And as Elie Honig suggested, this case, if it is ever brought, and it's likely it will be, comes with a lot of baggage, and not carry-on baggage. This is, you know, the potential that former members of the Department of Justice may be called to testify as to why they thought there was no case here. They do have referrals from Congress, you know, referrals to the Justice Department alleging perjury. But the referrals are built around what they call inconsistencies in his testimony about certain aspects of the Russia influence investigation in the Trump election. And as Elie Honig will likely agree, perjury has to be a clear, proven, intentional lie on the part of a witness under oath. When you have multiple members of Congress questioning one witness about multiple different things at different times and alleging inconsistencies, that's much more of an uphill battle, especially in a case that looks nakedly political, which is, this is how this one's coming in.
We are following, as we promised, breaking news. It's out of the Eastern District of Virginia, where three sources familiar tell MSNBC former FBI Director James Comey is expected to be indicted in the coming days. The full extent of the charges being prepared against Comey is unclear. Joining us now, MSNBC Justice and Intelligence correspondent Ken Dilanian and MSNBC Senior Investigative Correspondent Carol Leonnig. Chris O'Leary, Ashley Parker, still with us. Carol, help us understand the reporting.
So, Katie, we have some sources who say that for several weeks now, the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Eastern District of Virginia, and actually in offices that are potentially much further south than Alexandria, have been eyeing ways to indict Comey, and they are getting very much closer. The statute of limits, rephrase, they are arguing that Comey, there is evidence to suggest Comey lied to Congress in his testimony on the Hill in September of 2020. And for viewers out in the audience who may not be legally as nerdy as me and Ken, I'll just say that there's a statute of limitations to charge people with the crime of lying to Congress or perjury, and that's 5 years. The 5-year statute runs this month.
So what exactly is he accused of lying about, Ken?
Well, there was an exchange. There was a seminal hearing back in September of 2020 where congressional Republicans grilled him in the Senate about the Crossfire Hurricane investigation, the FBI Trump-Russia investigation. And remember, there were some issues around FBI mistakes, and the Republicans were accusing him of all sorts of misdeeds and of relying on that dossier. But in one exchange with Senator Ted Cruz, he was asked about a previous question that had been put to him back in 2017 by Senator Grassley about whether he had ever authorized the leak of information about the Trump administration or the Clinton administration and Hillary Clinton. And he said that he had not. He repeated his answer back in 2017. The Republicans were suggesting at the time, and we believe at least one theory of this is now, that was a lie. Of course, Comey insists it wasn't a lie. That Comey, in fact, had authorized somehow a leak of information. And what Ted Cruz cited during the hearing was a leak by then Deputy FBI Director Andrew McCabe to the Wall Street Journal about an FBI investigation into the Clinton Foundation. Now, what's important to know about that is there was a whole Inspector General report about Andrew McCabe's behavior and his leaks, and he was criticized in that report. But that report found that he was authorized on his own as a deputy director to talk to the media, and that he did so without explicit authorization from Comey. So on its face, that doesn't seem to support the idea that Comey lied. Of course, we don't know everything that the grand jury is contemplating. And in fact, I should say, Katie, this is a fluid situation. This could change. We are being told this by 3 sources that an indictment of Comey is expected in the coming days. They're also saying that this same office is expected to charge Tish James, the New York Attorney General, with mortgage fraud. And of course, Donald Trump, we all saw it posted on Truth Social in recent days, exhorting his Attorney General to charge both of those people as soon as possible. Again, you know, grand juries are secret. This is a fluid situation. It's also important to know, though, that the U.S. attorney, the Trump-appointed U.S. attorney in this office, Eric Siebert, was essentially forced out last week, in part because he was refusing to bring these cases. We're told that he was opposed to prosecuting both James and Comey on these grounds, and he's out now. And the new U.S. attorney is a former Donald Trump defense lawyer who's never prosecuted a case. So that's the state of affairs.
What is her legal expertise? Or her legal arena?
She's a lawyer. She was a lawyer in the White House for a while. She represented Donald Trump in the Mar-a-Lago investigation. She's not a prosecutor.
Lindsay Halligan is her name. Carol, do we know that a grand jury is meeting?
I can't say with absolute certainty that they're meeting today, but we know some of the people that have been contacted for information, Katie. We know some of the people who've been asked questions about these theories that Comey allegedly lied to Congress. As Ken described, there is some flimsiness and some factual challenge to some of the theories that we've heard.
Former FBI Director James Comey may be indicted soon. Sources tell CNN that President Trump's Justice Department is close to deciding on whether to charge Comey with lying to Congress. The testimony in question happened on September 30th, 2020, when Comey appeared before Congress to answer questions about his handling of the investigation into Russia's meddling in the 2016 election. You see him there. This was during COVID, of course, so he's doing it from home or from work. Under the law, prosecutors only have 5 years to the day to bring such a charge. If a grand jury does approve the case in the coming days, this would be one of the highest profile indictments in President Trump's second term. And this comes after President Trump made blatant public directives to his Attorney General, Pam Bondi, to prosecute his political enemies, including Comey. And, of course, he fired a U.S. attorney for not bringing criminal charges against his opponents. CNN crime and justice correspondent Caitlin Polantz and CNN senior justice correspondent Evan Perez join us now. So, Caitlin, what are prosecutors doing right now before they run out of time?
Well, to the best of our knowledge, they are getting ready to present a case to a federal grand jury in the Eastern District of Virginia. So that's part of the federal court system in Virginia, where a lot has gone down in the past few days. What we do know about this is the contours of what has to happen between now and Tuesday. So we know that the prosecutors are looking at the possibility that James Comey lied to Congress. That's according to sources that Evan and I have. And we also know that that possible perjury charge, there's a deadline to bring it, because in the federal court system, you have 5 years to bring a charge. And that testimony Comey gave, it was on September 30th of 2020. September 30th, that's next Tuesday, and grand juries don't sit every day. What day will the Justice Department be able to go before a secret grand jury in one of the federal courthouses in the Eastern District of Virginia? Today's a possibility. Tomorrow, Monday, not a lot of time, and they will have to convince those grand jurors, between 14 and 22 people, to vote yes to indict Comey. We know that there have also been several different investigations around Jim Comey over the years after he was the FBI director. A lot of scrutiny there. He's the person that Donald Trump was posting on social media about over the weekend, saying no talk, all action, no talk, justice must be served, mentioning what about Comey. This situation, we don't know the exact details of what this indictment will say, but we are waiting to see exactly what emerges out of the federal.
So we don't know specifically what he's accused of lying about.
That's right.
Oh, that's interesting. And Evan, the Eastern District of Virginia, the U.S. Attorney's Office there, we've been talking about that.
Yeah, we were talking about this
since
just last
Friday.
week. Yeah.
Remind everybody.
Well, Eric Siebert was the U.S. Attorney there. He was he was the acting U.S. Attorney, and he was picked by Donald Trump to run that office. And we know that one of the things that
this new attack is not going to work. It's going to infuriate so many people. James Comey is respected within the FBI. Again, this is not about whether or not I like him or you like him, or, you know, obviously Republicans don't like him because he stood up to Trump. Many Democrats have criticism about how he handled the memo about Hillary all the way back in 2016. Not even necessarily that he had a memo, but that the timing of it was almost tailor-made to have an effect on the election. At least that's the perception people have, right? Again, at least in the narrative. But, like, let's be clear. This is a respected public servant, and Trump going after him is only going to hasten the exit of people from federal service and only hasten his reliance on cronies. And yes, cronies will do what you want, but cronies are also dum-dums. And dum-dums, even when they're loyal, sometimes can't accomplish the mission you give them. And there's not a lot of legal basis here. There's not a lot of legal basis. One, a lot of people feel this is a witch hunt. But even in the sense that anything was done wrong, there's not a lot of proof beyond any reasonable doubt. It goes to some of the criticisms Trump allies had about his cases, except here it's much more valid. The whole argument was, well, even if Trump did something wrong, they don't have enough proof that he did it. And you know, he's innocent until proven guilty, right? Well, here I think that's that on steroids, right? Donald is trying to get his political enemies. Remember, his biggest lie in the election, because throughout the whole thing, he said, I will be your retribution. I'm getting elected for revenge. And then he said, well, actually, what I mean by that is my revenge is proving the haters wrong. That I'm going to come back to power. I'm going to be president for everybody. I'm going to get the job done. Lower costs, increased prosperity, blah, 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 blah. And that's my revenge. My revenge is success, right? Enough dumb voters bought that. But very clearly, the actual revenge was what he talked about for most of the 4 years before he ran, which was getting revenge on any perceived political enemy. And that's what he's doing right now. I don't think it's going to work because here's the thing, Donald. You are not a dictator. You don't control the juries. You don't even control all of the judges. They're not going to stand for this.